On the Cut, reflections on life, work and trade on some of the main canals of England in earlier years of the century. For almost a century and a half, most canal boats, if they were not man-handled, were pulled by horses or mules or ponies. In our own century, however, boat people saw the introduction of motors of various designs, and they had to adapt their working lives to meet the change.
You've got a certain amount of hours to do in a day because you've got to rely on your horse. When your horse was finished, you was finished.
You had to look after it in its stable, you had to clean it, feed it, and you had no pleasure like to leave it, had you? And the gears to look to and everything, but a horse was as good as a mate.
We used to start from Runcorn in the morning. When we had 2 horses, 2 boats then, you see. So my dad would say, shout, Annie, come on, time we're going for them horses. So he was dressed ready for go. Well, I got get dressed. I was in bed. And I used to pop my things on and I used to dress myself. I was walking down the road. Tie my shoelaces up. Because I've got to go with one horse, you see. And he'd say, he used to gear him for me, and I geared my own horse if it was time enough, but it wasn't time enough some mornings, you see. But it was a good way for me to walk down.
Were you good at controlling the horse?
I worked horse 6 years. One horse. He was a baby.
What did you call him?
Bill. He was a mottled grey horse.
Boat people from the south, the north and the Midlands talking about their animals. And here's a Wolverhampton man recalling how his father passed on his knowledge of horses and his attitudes towards them.
He'd go out, you see, when you was young, and he'd learn you that you must look after the horse. The horse looks after you, you look after the horse. He can't ask you, but you can tell him. And it's up to you to look after him to see if he's all right. That's the first job. Now, after you come second, he comes first, with my father. If the horse wouldn't do its job, he'd go and swap it for another horse, as long as they was reasonable. They might draw a bit of money, they might spend a bit of money. It's only a few quid. And they'd do this, so they might have a horse on the weekly, about £1 a week, or 50p a week.
What would you be looking for in a good horse, though, if you're going in for all of this sort of swapping?
One was a bit thin, wanted to get in up, and also a little lively. And then when he got up to his fatness and that, see how lively he was, because sometimes they get very lively, and very erratic, you know, and they'd also be all right. Well, if he didn't, or he wouldn't go on his own, or he wouldn't just go if you wanted to. If you walk with him, just kick a bit of dirt on his heels, or get a little bit of twig and just touch him. If he didn't go as you wanted him to, then you got rid of him.
When you started with a horse in the morning, you had quite a bit to do to set it up in its gear. What did that mean? What had you got to do to kick off?
If we was going to start at 5 with the boat, we'd get up about 4. Get your corn and make yourself a cup of tea. Get your corn, get everything ready, and if it's a reasonable morning, give him a rush down, wipe the shit off him or wash it off him before he come out. Make sure he's right, wash his shoulders, make sure his shoulders all right, make sure his collar was all right. He'd probably do that at night anyway, you know, if he wasn't too tired, and make sure he's all right. If it's a bad morning, then you put his cloths on and his collar cloth on so that he didn't get it wet. If it was a bit warm, you'd put his collar cloth on and leave the rest off, for all your brushes was getting wet and everything. And you polished your shoe polish on your leather to keep them shiny, and clean all your brushes up ready every other day.
How long would all of that take?
At night time, you might spend an hour on it at night, or an hour and a half, doing all a lot and cleaning him down. Then in the morning, give him a quick rub over and chuck his gears on. If you was in a hurry and you was overlay or anything, you'd dash out, half dressed and half undressed. It was a reasonable morning. Throw the gears on and have him out in about 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, and but he'd still have his corn. You'd still give him his corn while he's travelling. You wouldn't starve him for that bit, for although he was all right. Also make sure that he'd always got a good bed, or you picked a stable where they kept good beds if it was another half an hour's or an hour's travelling, to make sure he had a good dry bed. and a thick one, not a thin one, and kept clean, the stables.
A few people have mentioned to me that there were such characters as horse fettlers.
The firms used to have them, somebody used to have them here looking after the horse, make sure the horse was fed, cleaned, ready for you to pick up. They called them fettlers. Some people called them stablemen. I'll give you so much for that distance you was taking it for that horse. You know, you didn't overdo it, just enough, as long as you fed him with it. Some used to give it the horse, some used to give it to somebody else and leave the horse. There were some good horsemen and there were some bad horsemen.
And that's one of the points in the next group of recordings, varying attitudes to horses and mules. The speakers come from Staffordshire, the West Midlands, Cheshire, Oxfordshire and Middlesex.
We were tied up one night at Weston in Derbyshire, and about 11 o'clock at night there was a boat come by us, and he drove that horse all night, all next day, and the horse dropped down dead at Haywood. Well, he didn't think much of his horse, did he? He didn't.
My brother, he was a horseman. He could do anything with a horse. He was a crook. I mean, he could get a horse, look at it, it was dying. He'd keep it alive for 3 or 4 days, make it the finest horse that was breathing. He says, but it don't last for a week. Then he'd stick in the block and flog it. Eh? But he could always get one right if it was bad.
Dad had heard some good reports about the mules being good workers, so Dad always liked the idea of possessing one. So when he came from the public house, the deal had been done, and he'd got a mule. Well, Dad set off with the mule, and we went down to Western Point, and everything went okay. But on the return journey, we were coming along the canal near Northwich, and it was 5 o'clock at night, and Dad's idea was to keep coming till he got to, I suppose, Road Heath. But when we got at Northwich, there was a lean-to for horses to rest in while boats were being unloaded at that point. And this lean-to, there were no doors on it, but there were probably half a dozen stalls. This particular mule that Dad had got, he must have been working on some job where 5 o'clock was finishing time. So, as it was 5 o'clock, and animals know what the time is, he turned in to the first stall, and Dad went alongside him and pushed him backwards till he got out of it. But he immediately went in stall number 2. And this happened, and he went from stall to stall. He did not want to work, and Dad eventually got him out. But he simply would not pull the boat, and how Dad finished up for the night somewhere in that area. But I know this, that once Dad returned to the potteries, that mule was simply disposed of. Dad swapped back for another horse. He'd always fancied a mule, and now he'd had a taste of this one, he didn't want another.
We didn't have 2 mules all the time. We had a horse and a mule, and sometimes we had 2 mules.
Did you have any strong feelings about mules as compared
No,
with horses?
we liked them. My husband always liked them. He'd rather have them than horses. But the last part we had a horse about 19 years, I think. No, the mule we had 19 years.
That's a long time to have a mule
he
working.
was a good old stick, though he were. We didn't like it when they killed him either, because he had a stoppage, you know. He couldn't pass nothing, and I made him keep him for 3 days before I let him kill him. Because I thought he'd get better, see, but he didn't get better. He got worse. So I had to give way then.
You treated the horse as you treated yourself, and looked after it because he'd got to do the work for you.
Did you have one particular horse for a long period, or did they change every so many months?
We had one horse for near enough for 8 years, and he never had only rest at night or weekends when we was at what we call Alderley Junction, the cut end. If we used to get there some Sundays, they closed at 12 o'clock for Monday morning.
Would the horse have any idea of the journey in the same way that you would? And I'm asking you really about how well they got to know it.
Yes, the horse had the same knowledge of the journey as we did. I think, in fact, that sometimes we thought the horse had got more sense than what we got. Because he always knowed where he was going, and he knowed where he was going to stop. Well, near enough, anyhow. Most of the time he used to go on his own, nobody with him at all, which was known as baccaring.
But occasionally, a horse could stray into the canal and make great difficulties, as this former Atherstone boatman well recalls.
Well, sometimes you'd got to get in with them and get them out, or used to shove a plank underneath the belly and ropes on them and roll them out. Sometimes we used to have to, give them good hiding to get them out. There was idle, they'd just lie there and drown. A mare, well, she drowned both ways, from the back and from her mouth. If they got the nose bucket on, having the feed, and they fell in with that on, you've got to jump in straight away and get that off, because it was up over the mouth and full of water. They'd drown straight away.
How frequently was there any sort of provision for walking horses out? I mean, in the London area, there are walkouts.
That's right, there is in London. Well, these are only basin canals. Birmingham, they're straight sides, they are. Well, you have to jump them out then. You have to get the horse facing you and lift his one foot up and give him a tilt and then get out of the way quick, else he'll be on top of you.
Towpath problems with wayward horses. But problem horses could be turned into successes, as this next recollection about a memorably lively horse shows.
It'd hold its head like a rainbow when you once got it working properly, and it'd do these high steps even with a boat and walk along nicely. And she was really beautiful, a beautiful horse. Well, I got that horse down, quiet, and if anybody ever hears this and ever remembers it, they'd tell you. And it was so great. Oh, you couldn't, you can't hardly picture for a boat horse, and the way it looked. And I got it as you could turn around and say, go on, away she'd start the boat on her own, away to go. Now, when I had her to sit away in the first place, we went through the edge, me and the horse, back again, and the bloke said, he says, I'm not getting on there. He says, you can handle that all the way and walk all the way. I said, I'm not going to get hurt. Oh, stay where you are. I said, don't worry about it. Because I was only a bit of a kid. For all I was in charge of the boat. Never mind him if he was a big man and married. And with about 3 or 4 weeks, she began to come to earth and then start to work nicely.
Horses had to cope with all sorts of irregular bits of path, didn't they, where they had to get under bridges and round corners and clear particular bends in the canal and so on. There was a lot of demand on their intelligence.
Oh, yeah. Well, it just depends what sort of a teacher you was. If you was a good horseman and a good teacher, you'd learn the horse in the first place, and he'd do it, and he knew what to do. And same as if you was in a lock, and it was a very heavy lock to get out of, or one way or the other, you had to put the pulley block on, as we call it. That horse, you'd turn around and say, come on, come back, and he'd turn with his head to the canal, because you learned him that, and he'd come back. Whoop, run back, and he'd turn around and he'd go back, like me telling you, and he'd turn with his head to the canal again, not with his behind, because the behind could slip off and go in the canal. But him turning with his head to it, he can see it and he'll come round all right. We always train him not to go in the canal if we can help it. And also some horses, when there was meeting, would not face a line coming to him. For all he's going to stop the horse to lose the line under him, for him to step over it. The moment you see that line, he'd turn around and go backside the other horse and take a gallop. Knock him in the cut and you and all if he wasn't careful. Not many did it, but they would. When you see that rope, oh no, you'd be in.
Towpath experience with horses. Well, here's another towpath tale told by a man who ran a timber yard alongside the Staffs and Worcester Canal at Kinver.
When I was operating at the old mill, that was where we ran our machinery with the water wheel, I also had a wheelwright's and blacksmith shop. And we did all the boat horses on the canal. T&S Elements were my biggest customer, and they had anything between 36 or 40 horses on the canal every day. And the majority of them wore the shoes out in a fortnight because of the pulling, the towing into the towpath. But they were carrying 28 ton on each load, and they go from Green's Forge, where they loaded, down to Stourport and back up to Kimber in a day.
Good business for you then?
Oh yes, they used to stable them generally here, at the lock here, or up at Stew Pony. Of course, most of them are passed on now, but I was very familiar with them, and of course, when they needed a set of shoes, my blacksmith and I used to stop as late as 10 o'clock at night to wait until he came back up from Stourport and shoe the horse so that he could be off next morning at 4:30. And I remember on one occasion, and I shall always remember as long as I live, but during the summer they used to turn out the boat horses at the Stew Pony in the field adjoining the loch, just below the Staunton Castle. And the little man known Jimmy Bowen, who had got a white horse, it was the only white horse, he came on the first buzz at 5:30, went and got his horse and left the gate open. And when myself and the blacksmith came next morning, there was something like about 34 horses outside the main gates of the blacksmith shop. They'd come all the way from Stew Pony and down to the blacksmith shop by Mr. Bowen leaving the gate open. So they knew the way, didn't they?
Horse sense at Kinver. Now, here's a Yorkshire boatman talking about some traditional solutions to boat-horse problems.
When they wanted to get a horse under whip, they used to have a gun, if you will, and they used to take the pellets out, put grain in, and shoot at his ears, and then till they went up his back, so his tail would fly up, and give it to the on his back, and then you'd just crack whip like that. But you only did it once, and that horse were under whip after that. It was like gating it. And if the wind were blowing, and say blowing you down outside, you just crack whip like that, and it would get into collar. Now, if you had a horse as were one speed all the time, that were a better horse than any horses were jumping, because it crushed it with collar, crush it with booms, and it'd have sitters. And to get them out, you should get a bottle.
What are sitters?
They're like a boil. And you get the collar and you draw it in. You'd put a stitch that way and this way and draw it in. And it would leave like a hollow in collar. And it couldn't go on it. Or you put a breast collar on, you see, to ease it. But that's where they used to do. And use rubbing starch and your own water. And mix it up and put it on it. And a skin on it in the morning. With rubbing starch and you whistle, you pee, you know. And that's what best things were for it.
In the 1920s, horses had to make way for diesel motors, and that's a change that's highlighted in these next two recollections, one from Loughborough in Leicestershire and the other from Kidlington in Oxfordshire.
First motor we had was the Badger with my father in 1928, 15-horse Bollinger. She was built in 1926. A fella called Jack Woodard had a new, and then when he had another new one in 1928, my father had it. Because it was, when you started at the end, you got no horse to go and feed. All you got was the engine and that, you see. You took about 45 tons. Yeah.
How did that engine perform as far as you were concerned?
Oh, quite all right. It wasn't much trouble. Well, just some was, but some weren't. Same as everything else, I suppose. It worked, you made your own, according to how you worked it.
How did you start it in the morning?
We used to put a blow lamp on it and put the spirits into the saucer. Let it get warm, and then you've got a paraffin container. You used to pump that up, and then the blow lamp would start blowing. And when the bulb got red and the cinder got warm, you just put your pin out, put your foot on it, and start it with your foot.
Well, I didn't like a motor at all, I didn't. I used to stop on the butty boat. I didn't go on the motor much because I couldn't get on with a motor. The motoring boat was all right. I mean, it was easy when you got out the locks. You hadn't got to do no walking or anything like you had with the horses. I mean, it was much easier with a motoring boat. Because, I mean, when you got out the locks, I mean, you could get on the boat and you could sit on the boat. I mean, you hadn't got to get off or anything. But when you got horses, you got to be off all the time with the horses, minding the horses. See, you couldn't get on the boat and leave the horses on their own all the time.
A boatman on the Oxford Canal at Hillmorton, near to Rugby, went into some detail when he was talking about the way his father and mother reacted to the arrival of boats with motors.
He took to it all right.
wasn't too sure of himself, nor my mother, more so my mother. She was more used to horses than Dad. But us, the kids, you know, we just stuck to it.
And what kind of motors were they? What were you dealing with?
Oh, twin-cylinder diesels.
Were they difficult to deal with, really?
No, very easy.
And yet your mother had some anxieties.
Well, it was a new way of life to her, wasn't it, with a motor.
Can you recall any of the things that would make her nervous?
If you got what we called a top-heavy load, which was a load above the gunwale of the boat. Like with a motor, if you went round a turn a bit too quick, we'll put it that way, you had to pull the butty boat round, which was the last boat, you know, and you could actually roll the butty, and it'd make a squeal, you know, that sort of thing.
What about controlling the engine and knowing what was what? Did she get the hang of that without any
No,
problem?
never did. Never did.
I have no recordings on the subject, but there were women who came to take command of boats with motors and of pairs of boats, especially during World War II on the Grand Union Canal. A variety of engines came to be used to propel narrowboats, but probably the one that makes the veteran boatman turn his head today to see a surviving example is a Bollander's engine. Here is such a boatman talking to me in his boat at Milton Keynes.
I worked horses first, and then I went working mate with people with Bollander engines.
Did you have to have any special training to handle that engine?
No, we used to steer it and pick it up as we steered it. It come to us naturally.
What did it involve doing?
Stopping it at night, oiling it up, filling it up, keeping it clean, working it, lighting it up next morning, put the blow lamp on it, get it warm enough, kick it off, work it in the daytime, and do the same routine all the while. Clean it. If it blowed joints, still red joints, you've got to take the head off, take it off, clean it, put a new one on and put it back together again and start it up.
It sounds pretty complicated when you say it like that, but what controls did you have to use when you were on the move?
There was 4 controls. The engine stood here, and there was a footboard there you stood on, and the tiller behind you. There was 4 controls, worked them, comes down. On the old water-dripped engines, there was 3 controls. That was a clutch, speed wheel, and reverse.
Each of these taking the form of a rod from the way you're
Yes.
moving your hands?
They stood like that. But you only used them when you eased up by boats, or eased up to go into a lock.
Let me ask you something. If you've got 4 controls like that, and you've got a tiller to keep an eye on, or a hand on anyway, how have you got enough hands to do what needs doing?
Your back on the tiller, your back on your ribs, and your hands on the controls. Well, the old time, as I said, Bollander's water drips, they had a string coming along, down to a water drip wheel, and you pull that string, you'd open the valve. When that bulb got red hot, you open that string, and it put more power, it gives you another 5 horsepower. And then they converted that, done away with them, and they put these old new E-type Bollanders in, square silence engines, with a small head on, a longer stroke piston. And they went on for years and years. There's some going about now.
Is it an engine that you learn to respect?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Can you tell me either a car, I won't say Rolls-Royce, any engine, that the firm that makes them can guarantee you, when you buy a engine off them, it gives you 10 years guaranteed with the cylinder alone? Can you tell me an engine? Any firm makes an engine? Give you that guarantee?
No reply from me, but by way of a close, here are a few brief and touching words on another kind of respect, on which I'm sure many boat people would be able to agree.
I never shall forget my horse. Horse is my best friend, and I can't say no more.
Taking part in today's programme were Alf Best, Joe Bridge, Annie Brooks, William Arthur Grimes, Bob Brown, George Marlowe, Elizabeth Hone, Joe Safe, George Chadwick, Ken Wrigley, Jack Meredith, Noel James and Jack Kent. In the next edition of On the Cut, Canal people talk about boats on the move.